My name is Cole Mercer, and I don't remember the moment I became invisible, only the moments that reminded me I was. You see, in every family business, there's a golden child, and there's the glue. I wasn't born with charm, but I was born with resolve. While my brother smiled at investors and pitched dreams over cocktails, I stayed behind cleaning up the mess, running the books, negotiating with vendors, and holding the walls together with nothing but late nights and quiet endurance. The foundation of the company, that was me. But nobody congratulates the foundation. They just decorate the top floor. I was 17 when our father gave us the keys figuratively and literally. The hardware store had 3 aisles and a loyal, aging customer base, not glamorous, not scalable. But he believed in building something for us. Me and my older brother, Travis. And while Travis talked about franchises and branding, I was back in the supply room tracking the shrinkage and refining logistics. He called me small-minded, said I didn't think big enough. But I watched the world burn through overreach. I watched good men fail by chasing too many fires at once. I lit one flame and kept it burning. The day I got pushed out wasn't dramatic. That would have required someone to actually look me in the eye. Instead, I was informed via a meeting invite I was never supposed to see executive restructuring discussion. Attendees: Travis Mercer, CFO Linda Granger, Legal Mitchell Lyons, External Consultant. Location: my office. I walked in early, sat in my chair like it might be the last time. The same desk I'd built from leftover stock during our first store renovation. Every scratch told a story. Every dent, a late-night decision that kept the lights on. They came in 12 minutes late. Travis began, not meeting my eyes. There's been some discussion. I already knew. The moment I saw the lease renewal documents missing my signature, the moment our top vendors started avoiding my calls, the moment the payroll platform locked me out. We think it's time to bring in a more growth-oriented operator, Travis said. You're excellent at what you do, but we need a new vision. He didn't thank me, didn't ask what I thought, just handed me a severance check and told me I'd be better off somewhere quieter. Quiet. That's what they thought of me. Because I didn't pound tables or parade my achievements. But silence doesn't mean surrender. It means observation. And I had observed everything. For years, I watched how Travis ignored lease clauses, how he dismissed long-term liabilities in favor of flashy quarterly wins, how he put up buildings without owning the ground, expansion without anchor, growth without gravity. So I did what I always did. I prepared. I didn't argue. I walked out, but I didn't walk away. 5 years before that meeting, I had begun acquiring, quietly, deliberately, land parcels beneath our key locations. Strip malls, loading docks, the gravel lot where our distribution hub sat, through shell companies, through trusts, always clean, always legal. I never wanted revenge. I wanted protection. I wanted roots to because you don't build a future on glass towers. You build it on bedrock. And now, as I stood across the street from our flagship store renamed Mercer Pro Hardware, I saw Travis through the tinted glass, still smooth and cutesy, still selling. But now, he was selling on land he no longer owned. Because patience, when compounded over time, becomes something else entirely. It becomes power. My phone buzzed. A text from Carter, my attorney. Lease renewal signed. Mercer Pro now paying market rate on all 3 parcels. Effective immediately. I stared at the screen, not with triumph, but with quiet knowing. They had fired the man who fixed the pipes, balanced the ledgers, and trained the staff. Now they were paying him just to stay open. When I walked into my new office, high ceiling with clean light and oak floors, I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt like I'd earned back something that had been stolen. Not money, not power, but dignity. And they would pay that dignity back monthly, like rent on a lesson they never wanted to learn. I never sought titles. I sought truth. And the truth is, some of us were never building for applause. We were building for permanence. And permanence always outlasts performance. They built their empire on my patience. Now they pay rent for it. I wake early now, not out of urgency, but out of ritual. There's a stillness at 5. That tells the truth. The kind of quiet that doesn't lie to you with applause or spreadsheets. Just your thoughts. Just your pulse. Nina Sharin on Tershim. When I walk my property, I don't think about balance sheets. I think about roots, oak trees that outlive men, foundations laid not for speed but for survival. There's something ancient in that, something sacred. After the buyout, I didn't race into another venture. I walked slowly, deliberately. I learned again what it meant to build without eyes watching. You start with values, and my first was discipline. Discipline is the parent of all victories. It's what carried me through the years when I was unseen, when I was unthanked, when I was useful, but not valued. I didn't grow bitter. I grew sharper. When they handed me that severance check, I already had contracts lined up, already had capital working. They thought they were cutting me off, but I was never feeding from their hand. I was building my own table. My lawyer, Carter, joked once that I could write a book called The Patient Predator. I laughed, but I knew the truth. I wasn't hunting people, I was hunting timing. That's the part they never understand. Revenge isn't about rage, it's about readiness. And when you've been ignored long enough, you become something more dangerous than loud. You become meticulous. Every clause in their lease, I drafted. Every renewal window, I scheduled. Every tax valuation, I accounted for. I watched them expand, stretch, and overspend. I watched consultants come and go, each one leaving a shinier resume but a weaker operation. And all the while, the ground beneath them, mine. I made sure of that. Because if you can't own the sky, own the soil, own what they depend on, own what they dismiss. And they did dismiss it. Dismissed me. Dismissed the quiet kid with the busted boots and the spreadsheet addiction. But you don't need noise to make history. You just need permanence. So I kept showing up to the courthouse, to the bank, to the closing tables. Always early, always quiet. Because the loudest thing I would ever say was not a speech. It was a signature. The irony is, when they started calling again, they didn't even know it was me. They called the landlord. They emailed Mr. Sardi or Sumter C. Mercer through the property management firm I'd hired to mask the ownership structure. They complained about rising lease terms, about needing grace periods, about the difficulty of retaining staff when the building needed updates. They wrote with desperation, and I read every word. I didn't respond out of malice. Nearly, did not respond. I responded out of clarity. We advise reviewing your signed lease. Terms are enforceable. All obligations stand. That was it. No vengeance, just law. No spite, just structure. And one night, walking past the storefront in winter, I saw Travis outside fumbling with keys. The lot had iced over. His breath rose in frustrated clouds. One of the lights above the entrance had gone out. He kicked the step. Hard. Cursed one owner one. There be concerned to it the turn. Looked around like someone should have fixed it. But there was no one there. Because I wasn't anymore. And now he was the one waiting in the dark. I kept walking. Because when you build from discipline, you don't stop to gloat. You just keep moving forward. I remember sitting in our father's shed when I was 12. It smelled of sawdust and oil, filled with half-finished projects in the patience of someone who understood that good things don't rush. He'd look at a warped board and say, "It's not ruined. It just needs pressure and time." That line echoed in my head for years, especially during the ones when pressure was all I had, and time felt like the only thing that belonged to me. You learn a lot in silence. You learn the language of restraint. You learn the shape of truth. Unspoken but unmistakable. And you learn to recognize when someone is bluffing with borrowed courage. That's what Travis had. Borrowed courage. Courage on credit. Bought with charisma. Fronted by false certainty. Me. I was never flashy, never loud, never the keynote speaker. But I didn't need to be, because when you walk with truth, you don't have to sprint. You just have to stay standing. The hardest part wasn't being overlooked. It was watching the people I cared about get hurt by someone I once trusted. Our employees, real people with families and loyalty, suffered under the weight of mismanaged ambition. Corners were cut. Promises were broken. The soul of what we built was traded for optics. One of our longest tenured managers, Ray Yewanum, called me after I left. "They're not listening," he said, voice low and tired. "They're asking for miracles but refusing to patch the holes." I told him I couldn't interfere. Not directly, but I thanked him. Because even in exile, truth finds you and loyalty lingers. So I built something new, not a business, a structure. I began acquiring not just land, but forgotten relationships. I reached out to former suppliers, staff, mentors, not to poach, but to appreciate, to remind them that the quiet ones still remembered who kept the ship afloat. In time, I started something small, a consultancy, not public, not to branded, just a phone number and a purpose. I helped other family businesses avoid the implosions we didn't. And I never advertised. I didn't need to. People talk, especially when you do right by them. A year passed. Then two we wanted to watch show. Then one afternoon, Carter called. You might want to sit down. That's how you know it's serious. Lawyers don't tell you to sit unless the foundation's about to shift. Mercer Pro is filing for restructuring. They're requesting to renegotiate lease terms under duress. Looks like your brother's been moving capital into side projects. Cash flow's drying up. I sat at my desk. The same handmade one I'd salvaged from the original store. What do you want to do? He asked. I stared out the window. This wasn't the moment I dreamed of. It wasn't the cathartic scene where the villain begs and the hero chooses mercy. It wasn't anything like that. It was quieter, like snow falling on a closed road. Enforce the lease. Oh, one and can you re one? I said, simple. One son and a blank. Clean. When reatin. Unemotional. Because when you teach someone that foundations matter, you don't get to unteach it. You just let the truth arrive. Later that week, I received a call. It wasn't Travis. It was Linda Granger, the same legal officer who sat beside him when they pushed me out. Callie, you, Denny Ree, in him. I hope you're well. I said nothing. There's on Durham concern about the property terms. The business is in a delicate place. We're asking for temporary relief. You mean to suspend your rent? We're asking to preserve the business. I let the silence stretch. Did you preserve anything when you watched me pack my desk? She exhaled slowly. I wasn't in a position to. No, I cut her off. You were exactly in position. You just didn't think the ground could shift beneath you. Click. Call ended. That night, I took out my father's old wrench and mounted it in a shadow box frame. Not because I missed the hardware business, but because I remembered the hands that taught me how to fix things, even broken trust, even wounded dignity, even myself. You don't need to win loudly. You just need to last longer. And I had. A week after the phone call from Linda, the public notice came out. A bankruptcy court filing, Chapter 11. It was neat. Predictable. Corporate. The paperwork didn't scream failure. It whispered exhaustion. That's how it always goes. No fire. No final slam of the door. Just the slow collapse of everything held together by ego and duct tape. Travis issued a press release slick, steadily. Sanitized us to research to one. Mercer Pro to reorganize for strategic growth. He used words like agility and refocus. Words that mean nothing to a man who once ran his mouth faster than the numbers. But I read the lines he didn't print. The silence between the optimism, the tremor in his last quote, thanking stakeholders for their patience. My patience. A few days later, I walked past the flagship store again. The window display was tired. Flyers curling at the corners. A seasonal sale sign clung crookedly to the glass. The kind of neglect that starts with leadership and ends with indifference. Miguel, the janitor we hired 15 years ago, stood by the entrance smoking a cigarette. He saw me and nodded. Thought you were gone. He said, I replied, seems like everyone else is now too. He took a drag, exhaled into the gray. They don't fix things anymore. Just tape them up. Nothing feels permanent. That line stayed with me because permanence was all I'd ever chased. Not recognition, not applause, just something that would last, something that wouldn't fall apart the moment charm wore thin. I shook his hand. You ever need something? You let me know. I might, he said. We all might. I walked away before he saw my throat tighten. There's a weight that comes from watching something you built rot from the roof down. You don't cheer for it. You grieve it. Quietly. Privately. And then Suritu, you build again. Not out of revenge, but remembrance. 2 months later, I met with Carter and the executive team of a regional building supply cooperative. They had interest in purchasing 3 of the former Mercer Pro properties. My properties. We're not just looking for a location, their director said. We're looking for culture, and permanence. I nodded. You're speaking my language. The terms were generous. Retain existing staff. Commit to community outreach. Local sourcing. They weren't looking to hollow out. They were looking to root in, and for the first time in a long time. I felt hope not just for my portfolio, but for the people who still believed business could be human. That same night, Travis called. Not Linda, not a lawyer. Him. Cole Mercer. He said, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I didn't speak. I messed it up, he admitted. I thought I could scale without the ground beneath me. He paused, waiting for absolution. I gave none. Why are you calling? I wanted to say, you were right. I didn't need to be right. I said, I needed to be respected. The silence on his end said more than his words ever could. I'm sorry, he whispered. I let it sit. Take care of yourself. Travis. Then I ended the call. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but because some things, once broken, are not meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be remembered. As I closed my office that evening, I looked once more at the shadow box frame. My father's wrench. A symbol, a tool, something that fixes. And I thought, maybe that's all I ever was. Not the star, not the strategist. The wrench, the thing that kept it all together. Until they dropped it. And now they rent it back. Month after month. Not because I demanded it, but because permanence remembers. The first time I visited the newly acquired property under its new ownership, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. The cooperative had repainted the walls in warm, inviting colors, replaced the flickering fluorescence with soft LED panels. They installed community boards by the entrance flyers for local events, handwritten thank yous from customers, kids' drawings held up with magnets. It was no longer just a business. It was part of something. I ran my hand across the countertop I had once stained myself. 20 years ago, still smooth, still solid, still there. Nami Kanarasadin, Mr. Mercer Wanam, Turmixarakidis, I turn. A young man, Shisferni, early 20s, in a crisp polo with the new co-op's logo. We were told you'd be stopping by. On behalf of everyone here, thank you. I smiled faintly. You make it worth it. He handed me a gift basket. Local goods, handwritten note, the kind of thing we used to do before Travis swapped it all for press kits and partnerships with influencers who'd never picked up a hammer. As I walked out, the wind picked up. A gust tugged at the old Mercer Pro banner still clinging to the flagpole across the street. It flapped once, then tore a clean break. I watched it fall. Sometimes the past takes care of itself. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through the lease agreements, not out of necessity, out of ritual. The fine print had become my scripture, the details, my discipline. But there was one thing I hadn't accounted for. Peace. I had spent so long preparing, defending, building in the shadows. I hadn't planned for stillness. Carter texted me around midnight. All 3 co-op transitions finalized. First payment cleared. Cleanest handover I've seen in 20 years. Proud of you. That last line hit harder than I expected. Proud of you. Maybe that's what I had always wanted. Not applause. Not revenge. Just acknowledgement that the way I chose to build quietly, deliberately, was not weakness. It was strength. Travis never called again. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he moved out west. Started something small. Consulting. Maybe something that required only him. And none of the infrastructure he'd once tried to scale without a soul. I wish him well. I do. Because the truth is, resentment is heavy, and I carried it long enough. Now I carry something different. Gratitude. Gratitude for the nights I was underestimated. Gratitude for the rooms I was left out of. Gratitude for the pain because it forced me to prepare. You see, they built their empire on my patience, but I built mine on permanence. And when storms came, one of us crumbled. The other rented out shelter. Ooh, there's a moment in every life built on resistance where the noise finally stops. You don't notice it at first. You're so used to clenching your jaw, to bracing for the next wave, the next slight, the next name left off the invitation. But then it hits you. No one's holding you back anymore. There's no fight left to finish. That moment came to me on a Tuesday morning. I was pouring coffee, watching the sun rise across the stone wall I'd laid with my own hands 2 summers ago. No deadlines. No attorneys. Just the quiet breath of a world that finally fit me. And I cried, not from sadness, from release. All those years being called the boring one, the safe one, the careful one. Turns out, the careful one had the last word. My phone buzzed. A message from Miguel. Place looks beautiful. The new owners even fixed the drainage system you always warned us about. You were right about everything. I smiled. Not because I needed to be right, but because I had planted seeds no one believed in. And now, our sovereign, they were blooming. If you ask me what I learned, what I'd pass on, it's this. Don't let the noise rush you. Don't let the flash blind you. And never confuse motion with meaning. Because permanence takes time. And when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It settles in. Like roots under concrete. Like stone under steel. Like silence after chaos. That's what I built. Not a business. Not a comeback. A foundation. Something that doesn't break when people do. They built their empire on my patience. And now, they live in the echo of my endurance. The quiet didn't last forever. Nothing does. But it lasted long enough for me to realize I didn't miss the chaos. I missed the purpose. The building. The craft. Not the meetings. Not the politics. Just the act of turning vision into form. So, I started again. Smaller this time. Smarter. I bought an old train depot on the edge of town forgotten. Boarded up. A patch of cracked pavement and rusted signage. Most saw a tear down. I saw a beginning. With help from a few trusted people, Miguel among them, I restored it. Not quickly. Not cheaply, but meaningfully. It became something new. Not a hardware store. Not a franchise. A place for makers. Craftsmen. Apprentices. We called it the Foundry. We offered space. Tools. Mentorship. A place where people with skills but no resources could come and build not just things, but futures. It wasn't charity. It was legacy. Because I had learned the most powerful revenge is not success. It's creating something that outlives you. At the grand opening, Carter stood beside me. Never thought I'd see you smile this much, he said. That's because I used to smile for permission. I told him, now I smile for gratitude. There was a line of people outside. Not because we were giving things away, because they believed in what we were building, in the quiet strength of something solid, something slow, something true. Travis didn't show up. I didn't expect him to, but my father did. He looked older, smaller, but his eyes were clear. He didn't say much, just walked the halls, nodded at the welders, the woodworkers, the students hunched over blueprints. Then he came back to me. You finally built something that looks like you, he said. That line stayed with me. Because all those years, I'd been building what everyone else needed. Now, I'd built what I believed in. And belief, when turned into structure, becomes the kind of truth no quarterly report can touch. The Foundry wasn't an answer to my past. It was a question to the future. What if we built with soul? What if permanence wasn't just a tactic, but a philosophy? And what if legacy wasn't what you leave behind, but what you help others build while you're still here? That's what I'm doing now, helping others find the ground beneath them. Because someone once tried to take mine away, but I stayed rooted. They tried to replace me. Now they live on the foundation I laid. And the future, it grows quietly. Sometimes I sit alone in the loft above the Foundry. It's not big, just a chair, a window, and a shelf lined with the first items ever built there. A carved wooden bowl, a welded garden gate, a small, sturdy stool made by a teenager who didn't believe he could finish anything. Until he did. Those items aren't for sale. They're relics, proofs that when you give people ground to stand on, they rise. The Foundry now runs 3 locations. Not because I pushed for expansion, because the people asked for it. Each one built the same way, slowly, with intention. Nothing cookie cutter. Every wall, every joint, tells a story. We don't talk much about profits. We talk about permanence. That word again. I don't attend conferences. I don't chase headlines. I don't want to be a thought leader. I want to be a root system unseen, but essential. Every month, I still get the rental payments from the old Mercer Pro leases. Now it goes into a foundation account, funds scholarships, tools, and training programs. I smile when the transfers hit, not because of the money, because the thing they once built to outshine me is now funding what I was always meant to create. Travis might never understand what that means, but that's okay. Legacy is not about convincing everyone. It's about being undeniable. And when I walk through the halls of the foundry, past a line of buzzing machines and hopeful hands, I realize they may have built their empire on charm, but I built mine on character. And when charm fades, character remains. Strong is secure, quiet, patient, just like I always was. Some evenings, I walk through the first location, long after the lights are off and the last student has gone home. I don't walk to inspect. I walk to remember, to hear echoes in the beams, to feel the warmth that lingers in the wood and steel. There's a nameplate on the front door now. It says the foundry in raised bronze letters, and underneath, in smaller script, built to last. Not a slogan, a promise. Because that's the lesson I spent a lifetime learning. One nail, one contract, one silence at a time. You don't need to fight for every spotlight. You don't need to clap back, strike fast, or outshine anyone. You just need to hold. When the winds rise, when the applause fades, when the trends vanish, you hold. And if you do that long enough, the very people who tried to outrun you will look back and realize you never left. You were the foundation the whole time. So let them mock your caution. Let them scoff at your slowness. Let them forget your name. Because in the end, when the dust settles and the leases renew, they'll still need what you built. They'll still pay rent on the patience they never valued. And you'll be too busy building something better. Not louder, just stronger. Just yours. Forever. Want to discern, petit.